Sure. Okay, good. Okay, I'm gonna test my voice just to make sure.
Okay,
Double
good.
checking. Okay, I'm gonna. All right, nice. So this is Inside the Mind Game, episode 2, with my special guest VENCABOT. This is terrible intro, but let's just go for it.
Let's go
VENCABOT, how
for
are
it,
you
dude. Let's
doing?
go for it.
How are you
Dude,
doing,
I'm
man?
doing great, man. Had a really cool day. We woke up kind of early today, so I've been up. I'm a little bit drowsy. That's cool. It's cool to just sit here and chat with the homie. What's up, man?
I'm doing good. Slept a lot, that's for sure. So let's just get started, man. So I always want to ask, even though I probably have somewhat of a good idea, but I'm not sure if some people do. When did fighting games become like relevant in your life, and like when did you become in love with like just fighting games in general?
That's a really cool question, man. Yeah, back when I was a kid, I was really into fighting games like casually. I think a lot of people were, right? I love playing single player modes, arcade modes, unlocking new characters and endings in Tekken and
Mm-hmm.
Virtual Fighter, getting the customizable content like the new sunglasses and new jeans and stuff, and making your own characters. To me, that was mad dope. I never started playing fighting games very seriously though until I started playing Virtual Fighter 5 Final Showdown
Oh.
on PS3. That was the first game I played against another human being, and not just a CPU.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really what kind of blew me away about it was the fact that the virtual fighter community was so like warm and welcoming, and the mentorship, the friendship. Ever since then, I looked at fighting games way differently. So yeah, so for me, I guess it's hard to say exactly when it became like a major thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've always loved them, but I would say around 2013, 2012ish, when I was getting really into Virtua Fighter 5.
Mm. Nice. Did you ever feel like let's say did you ever feel like you were good at that game, or was it just like a
Yeah,
casual fighter?
no, dude, I thought I was good at it, and I was wrong. And that's sort of, I think, something that's kind of interesting about fighting games, right? Especially when you're playing them in a small community, let's say like Virtua Fighter, or let's say Third Strike,
Mm-hmm.
right? Third Strike is a relatively small community for a modern fighting game, or say compared to a modern fighting game. But one thing I learned from experience was back when I played VF, there was a time where there was a certain amount of like, let's say, circle jerkage going on in the American community for that game because it was very small. So it wasn't that hard to be one of the best in the country,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So one thing I've learned, from my short history with fighting games and the FGC is when someone says that they're, the best blank in the country, I'm the best, pie in the country, I'm the best Lao in the country, I'm top 10, you know, freaking Ibukis in the country,
Mm-hmm.
and you gotta take that with a grain of salt, right? Because it's
Right.
a game that has a relatively small player base, and of course, as we all know, for a game like Third Strike, so many of the much stronger players are overseas. So yeah, that's kind of to answer your question. Yeah, there was a time where I thought I was good at that game, but looking back at my footage and comparing it to, let's say, the actual strong VF players,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I was just sort of like an intermediate level player.
Mm. All right. Well, let's segment from that because I think that's a very strong like foundation we got here. So like what were your favorite games as like a child, and like what sparked this love for certain ones? So this will be like what's your like just in general, like what's your favorite game?
Oh, dude, that's you guys know me. If you guys know my stream, you guys know that I'm really passionate about game design and why a person would like or dislike certain games.
Mm-hmm.
For me, as a young kid, I was really into Sonic the Hedgehog games, like on Sega Genesis. But I really fell in love with games for the when I started playing JRPGs, man.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I've noticed is that there seems to be a lot of crossover between people that love JRPGs and people that love Third Strike.
Oh
Darian,
yeah.
why do you think that is, dude? I've always been curious. Like, why do people that love JRPGs love Third Strike? Because they're both so Japanese, maybe in their aesthetic.
Maybe I don't know. I would say from my opinion standpoint that it's like I play a JRPG. I love the tactical, like, okay, your turn, this turn, maybe
Mm-hmm.
shares some sort of relevance with it
Right?
because
Maybe, or maybe it's just like the level of strategy. Maybe
mhm,
it's kind of common between JRPGs and fighting games, like Japanese fighting games.
yeah, because I said
Could
this
be.
in the first episode that let's say I was talking to someone that is like a pro at Tetris, right? They can like
Mm-hmm.
Tetris all day. They understand the patterns. They would never understand it as easily as Third Strike if they just moved transitioned and not played Tetris anymore. Like they wouldn't get that same rhythm, but for some reason it synergizes with games that have some sort of similarities with it.
Right. Yeah, it could very well be. But yeah, in any case, yeah, I think that for me, like the world of video gaming, it went from being like a childhood fixation to like a lifelong obsession around that time where like PS1, like JRPGs, Final Fantasy, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
That's kind of what got me like really into video gaming.
For sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's like you're not alone on that too. Like I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
the
I think you're right.
PS1 shared like a good chunk of like people's hours and time.
Yeah, I think it was sort of like a console that kind of our whole generation kind of grew into, right? I think that when I was a kid, there was of course the NES and the SNES and the Sega Genesis, and they were like the main big consoles. But
Hmm.
once you had like the PS1 come out, that was sort of where we saw more like mature content, games that had a little bit darker of themes or otherwise were, more philosophical or political or otherwise like engaging not only narratively but also in terms of mechanically. They'd be a little more
Hmm.
demanding and not just so surface level. I think that PS1 era was where we kind of saw what I mean, nowadays, of course, in your generation, Kyosuke, we see that gaming is a hobby accepted by all ages,
Oh, of
right? Of course,
course. Hmm.
people that are in their 20s and 30s and maybe even beyond are considered a prime demographic for gaming. But man, when I was a kid, it was thought of as a toy, dude.
Oh
Like the
yeah.
consoles were thought of as a way to entertain young children. And I think that we saw in the PS1 era, we saw that kind of turn over. We saw more games targeting teens and people in their 20s.
Hmm.
Now it's something that we kind of are very well accustomed to in the game industry. So it is kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's very interesting because like let's say I grew up in your time, but we had like let's say I grew up in your time and we had the games that I had, right?
Hmm.
I think that if things were just flipping over, like if
Yep.
Third Strike came out where I would be still around at this age, but
Hmm.
like Cyberpunk would be around where you were, I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure the demographic of ages would be super different because of like the
Yeah.
time you're in and like the environment.
Yeah, I think that kind of what you're saying is if we had kind of broadened into a wider age group for gaming earlier on,
Hmm.
by now we would see games maybe being taken much more seriously as an art form.
Hmm.
I think that we're still kind of, I think as an industry, gaming is still sort of trying to shed that image of being a toy for children, right? Whereas,
Right.
if we had kind of gone in a little bit sooner, a little bit harder, maybe we wouldn't still have that sort of condemnation of the art form in that respect.
Well, I feel like that's because like bigger companies that have video games tied to them are made for children, like Nintendo or
Yeah.
Sega or something, right?
Right.
Like
Or
they're
we could, I'm sure they'd rather say quote unquote all ages, right?
right, yeah.
Like, maybe not so much for quote unquote children, but at least, more palatable to a family audience than a
Hmm.
game like Cyberpunk or something like that.
Oh, for sure. Um, so let's transition to that. So,
Hmm.
I actually want to know a lot about like your streaming life and like how you got into it. So, what made you want to stream for a living and like how did you feel it's been treating you lately?
It's kind of interesting. I used to work like 48 hours a week, minimum wage as a sort of a retail wage slave.
Hmm.
And that's a job that I found really interesting, really satisfying insofar as it was not only a good workout physically, but also a position that I could try new things and meet a bunch of people and kind of, express myself creatively in some respects, at least in terms of how I accomplish my tasks.
Hmm.
But there came a time where I felt like, they were asking too much of my time for too little. And so I began to save up my income, hoping that I could take some time off of work for a couple of years and try to do something creative, something that I would find satisfying, uh, more creatively. And at the time, I really wanted to be a music teacher, Darian. That was kind
Oh
of
yeah?
my ambition was to teach music.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people necessarily, if they know me through the stream exclusively, they might not realize I used to be like a music blogger.
Hmm.
I used to uh, kind of uh, run a blog about music theory and about synthesizers and that sort of thing, and making music on an iPad especially.
Mm.
And it's something I was very passionate about. And I kind of wanted to grow my blog into a live stream where I would stream, music production, and talk about it and try to teach it.
Hmm.
But kind of what I decided early on was that maybe that was kind of cerebral. It might be a little bit too demanding to stream for long sessions at once. And
Hmm.
so I wanted to teach myself streaming by playing video games. I thought it'd be a little bit more laid back. And then at some point, I was going to go back and actually teach music once I had the skills and I learned how to use OBS and stuff. But much to my surprise, I found that people actually want to come by and watch Dark Souls. And really, before I started streaming, I never watched a stream in my life. I'm an old fogey. For me, even watching like Let's Plays on YouTube was still a pretty new thing at the time.
Mhm.
Let alone considering watching somebody play a game live. Never really understood the appeal of it. Like, why do you want to watch someone play a game? You play it yourself, right? Like,
Mhm.
why do you actually want to watch a total stranger play a video game? So I really expected no one to ever come by. But I was really surprised to find that some guys would come by and they'd hang out and they'd want to chat and give me advice and become friends. And once I finished those first couple of long plays, I knew at that point that I didn't want to fuck around with teaching music. I really want to play games and make friends on Twitch
Mhm.
and kind of talk about game design and video games and explore them together. So that's kind of what my stream's all about. And yeah, as for how it's been treating me lately, it's the income from, I'm sure you'll hear this from any creative person, whether they're an artist or a musician.
Mhm.
It's not a very great income, dude. It's going to always be a lot of time and a lot of work for not a lot of return
Mhm.
insofar as the financial stability. But that being said, I'm very wealthy with friends, and the relationships I've made have been totally irreplaceable. So I would say it's treated me very well.
That's amazing. Um, do you think this is probably a long time ago if you still remember, but do you think like that spark of inspiration was after like playing Dark Souls, for example, or was it during? Like, would you feel that?
Oh, dude, it was definitely like the spark of it, dude. As someone that's kind of starting to stream yourself, Darian, more often,
Mhm.
you're gonna totally understand this. I feel like I think every streamer understands this, but the inspiration is when that first person comes into your chat and is friendly toward you.
Oh yeah,
Like when
definitely.
you have that person to talk to, even back, I'm really grateful that now the channel is large enough that I can actually count on people to come by and hang out with me.
Mhm.
But there was a time, man, where it was like, I'd be sitting there playing for a couple hours, and if that one person came back from yesterday, it was a really big deal. And it was a big deal, and that feeling's gonna never go. That memory's gonna never go away, dude. Like that
Mhm.
that feeling of kind of playing a game by yourself and kind of hanging out and talking to yourself. Then you see the same guy from last week come by. It's like, hey man, how's it going? Like that is such a rewarding experience to have someone come by and want to be a part of something you're making and to want to
View it.
not just view it but also to uh, contribute to it in a way that is sincere and emotional. The
Mhm.
fact that we could be total strangers and that you'd actually want to open yourself to my friendship and vice versa.
Mhm.
That's something that I think is unique to our generation, right? I mean, when I was growing up, of course, we only had television, and then of course, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, we saw like YouTube blowing up as a a creator focused platform. We saw
Mhm.
Let's Plays and stuff starting to pop off, started to have sort of a YouTube personalities and YouTube celebrities, quote unquote. But really, the fact that in the year of our Lord 2020, we actually have this platform where we can interface real time, live with other people. It just opens up this floodgate of humanity, the fact that we can have these connections with each other that's actually meaningful, not just as a way to quote unquote entertain each other the way that we used to with television or YouTube videos,
Mhm.
but also as a way to interface and a way to sort of be human with each other. To me, that's what streaming is all about, and that's what makes it so fucking fascinating, so inspiring to this very day.
Yeah. I can agree with you 100% on that. As much as I'm not really there yet, I can agree on that I've definitely been feeling that touch with the community that I've been building. It's definitely rewarding to see, like, let's say it's like, even if it's a friend of or even if it's like someone online that comes back
Right.
and it's just like, dude, you came back. That's really all that matters, because that's the whole thing that I love doing. It's like when you stream, let's say my last stream, World of Horror, after the first episode of this podcast, a bunch of people like that I would normally see come by didn't really come by, but people that would come by all the time. It always just means a lot that they would come by.
Yes, it's that's the quote unquote the regulars, right? The fact that
Hmm.
they kind of clearly enjoy what you do enough to return, and they want to make a sort of a more personal relationship with you.
Hmm.
It's just so damn cool, man. I think there's not a lot of other hobbies or jobs or ambitions out there kind of have that same sort of appeal in that respect. So shout out to technology, I guess, to
Yeah.
give us sort of this new media.
Hmm. So let's segment that off into like more. This is where I would want to get more third strike oriented, because I know
Yeah.
that us both are very heavy into third strike, right?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I think it's all right. It's an okay game.
yeah, it's an okay game. Uh, so um, I actually have a bunch of questions from some viewers I've been asking around. So how do you feel about like top players unmotivating other players, like newer players. So
How do you
like,
mean?
hmm?
So how do you mean?
So like, let's say I don't want to say for example, let's just say there's a big dude in the third strike community, right?
Right.
And then there's someone new that comes over. He's like, "Hey, can I play or something?" And then he's gonna be like, "Oh, it's a really hard game. I don't think you'd get it." Or like, they'd say something like they would just unmotivate them to like not
Right.
play because it's
I
like,
think I understand.
hmm
Yeah, what do I think
because,
about that? I would say that everyone has their own personality.
hmm
I think that the third strike community, from what I've seen, is not especially well. It's very inclusive. From what I've heard from lore masters like of course, Twitch.tv/Mutant Experience
hmm
and Katie Alpha and Kyoto 3S and all the people that have been in the scene way longer than I've been.
hmm
I've heard that Third Strike has a sort of a reputation for being sort of exclusionary or exclusive or
hmm
having gatekeepers that it's kind of hard to. I said there was a time where it was very hard to get into because players were sort of judgmental of newbies or
right,
otherwise sort of not welcoming. But I think that what we're seeing ever since I'm not sure how long before I got into the scene, but in any case, by the time I got into it, it seemed like everyone that I met through the game has been really, really warm and welcoming and very eager to always pull me in deeper to the game.
hmm
And I think that it goes without saying, right, that that should be what any community based around a fighting game should want to do. Right, you want to pull players deeper into the game, so you have more people to fight against, more people to to learn from, more people to fill out tournaments outside of the my super sappy ambition just to kind of create a larger network of friendship like
hmm
the human aspect.
yeah,
If you want to be strictly utilitarian, it goes without saying that you'd want to grow your player base for your game so that you can have more games to play in your community.
for sure.
So I think that you know if you want to be like forgiving or otherwise understanding of a hypothetical top player that would be sort of would warn players coming in that it might not be for them. You have to appreciate that it could come from the simple fact that they've become jaded over the years, right? Can you imagine being in a game like Third Strike for 21 years and having all these new players come and join your scene?
hmm
And you get all excited and try to train them and teach them the ropes, and then they just kind of quit after a while. It's too hard of a game, right?
hmm
So after having that happen to you, 10 times, you might start to tell new players, "Hey, listen, dude, don't bother, right? The game is too hard for you." Or if you're serious, and then you got to be really serious and don't try to be too friendly with me if you're not really serious about the game, that kind of thing.
yeah,
I can see how if you welcome a novice player into your scene and you're taking it very seriously, trying to train them and welcome them and invest in them, and they lose interest because the game is more involved than another fighting game or otherwise not as popular as another fighting game.
hmm
I can see how after so many times of having that happen to you, it kind of hurts you after a while, right? Make you feel a little bit more defensive about who you open yourself up to.
hmm
So there's always another story. There's
different perspectives.
exactly right.
hmm
So everybody has their own personality, man. I think that it's up to. I guess what I'm trying to say is that every person I've met through Third Strike has been really welcoming to me.
hmm
But I must stress that if you want to play Third Strike or any fighting game, you have to be self motivated. Right, you have to also want to play it yourself and want to get into it and want to get stronger at it. No amount of warmth and encouragement and mentorship can replace your own drive to learn the game. And if you find that you're getting scared off from a game because someone is, they're not being as warm to you or as welcome as you would like,
hmm
then maybe you should re-examine your actual level of dedication you're willing to put forward in that game, right? Like maybe you kind of have to take some responsibility and say that even if a player is not kind of pulling me into the game as much,
hmm
maybe I need to push in a little bit. I need to actually kind of insert myself. I need to go to tournaments. I need to go to these events. I need to, ask for advice, not wait for somebody to ask me if I need advice. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's kind of a balance to strike. Me, I'm sort of, you guys know me. I'm kind of a softie. I'm kind of shy. Uh, I'm kind of, you know, meek at times. So I think that for me, if not for players like Kyoto 3S, the Pharmacist 3S, Hispanic Jab,
hmm
also K. Reich Jr., Kenny Reichelderfer, players like that, Tengu Stoner, Courtney Miller. These are the guys. How about Lil B Brazy? These are the players that they sort of reached out to me and wanted to help me and wanted to encourage me. if not for them, I might not have gotten past that initial barrier
Hmm.
of Third Strike. I wouldn't have necessarily wanted to keep playing if not for these players that reached out to me first and wanted to kind of encourage me to play.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, I think it goes without saying that it's really important for us as Third Strike players when we see a new player to really kind of say, "Hey, dude, welcome aboard. I'm glad you're playing. Let's work together." Right.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's not going to always be that, right? Unfortunately, we live in the real world. It's not going to always be the case.
Hmm.
In which case, if you guys are watching and you guys want to learn a game like Third Strike or Melee or any other game that's technically oriented and there's a very strong player base that's very small but very hard to beat,
Hmm.
uh, and you really want to kind of meet those players and get good at the game, you're going to have to sometimes put up with the fact that not everyone's going to always be as welcoming as you would like, right? Unfortunately.
Hmm. Yeah. It's and another thing is like without any players, there wouldn't be a game, right?
Right, exactly.
And not only that, but that it kind of clicked with me. I don't know if you agree, but it kind of reminds me of like an actual family. Once people from above like teach the younger ones, meaning new players,
Hmm.
like how to play and like how to get good and like how to train. Then once the older players, like let's say they retire or they just quit Third Strike in general or any game,
Yep.
the ones they were training before are now in their spot, and then the cycle just keeps going. It's like a family, and that's what I think is really important when it comes to
Yeah, you would really hope. You would hope, right? And I think that what we've seen with Third Strike is that in many ways that's sort of been the case. I've seen so many players, like the players that I learned from,
Mm-hmm.
are players that started playing OE when it first came out,
Mm-hmm.
and then the players that they learned from are those that started playing on Anniversary Edition, right on PS2,
Mm-hmm.
and then they of course learned from the people that learned in the arcades back in the day. So we've kind of seen this sort of a gradual rollout to what we have now at the Jazzy circuit. We've seen people that are playing, people like Neon Riot, and of course, shout out to Dallas, Texas, people like Eddie and Noe, people that bought the game on PS4. That's the first version they played was on PS4.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, every generation, looks up to the players that had been playing the game for years before them.
Mm-hmm.
But Third Strike being 21 years old now, man, like many players that are still active today were playing this game when it came out in the arcades, right back in the year 2000,
Correct.
and
Yeah.
yet there is still this tier. There's some of these tiers of people that started on PS2, people that started on Xbox 360, people that started finally on on PS4 or Steam or whatever the case might be. It's such an awesome fucking game that way, man. Like it's just crazy to me that this game is so enduring
Mm-hmm.
and that people kind of they join in and fall off at all different points, and then when they fall off, they come back years later, right, under a different screen name. You don't know it's them for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, that's so and so, man. I can't believe it. That's why he's so godlike on Fightcade, because it's actually he has a different name now. But I thought he stopped playing back in the year 2012. He's still been playing
Mm-hmm.
under a different alias. So
Yeah.
it's just the kind of game that's very hard to limit to a single like era, right? Because all these players come from different times. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's pretty fucking dope. It's like a family. It kind of rolls out, right? Kind of there's generations to it. There's generations to it.
Almost like a
Hey, Apple's on board. We got Audrey Apple's in the chat. Ooh, very
yo
good.
apples. So what was I gonna say? Don't you feel like every every new player has something new to bring to the table? Like with every new generation, there's always like this weird new thing with like people like thinking about the game differently because they were raised in a different era than let's say the arcade era, you know?
Oh, that's totally true. That's totally true. But also, we have to keep in mind there's two sides of that coin, man. There's two sides of the coin. I think it's not totally appreciated. The the reality is that every new generation of players, young
Hmm.
players coming into the game, they're gonna always bring something new. They're gonna bring a new perspective. They're gonna bring new ideas. They're gonna come in with an open mind and kind of appreciate things in a way that a longtime player might not.
Right.
But that being said, I think that not enough is said sometimes about how every generation we have that comes to the game, we lose tech, we
Yeah.
lose we lose perspective, we lose the things that we might have had once before,
Hmm.
such that we see something in Third Strike, especially in other games of this of this age, we see tech being revealed on Twitter, tech being revealed on Discord. People discovering new things that have already been long discovered.
No,
Right?
yeah.
They are things
I,
that
I've
have
I've
are
been a victim to that too, where I was like, oh my god, I didn't know you could do this with Urian, and then everyone was just like, yeah, that's been the thing, dude. Like I,
But
I
what's
was
interesting
like,
about that too is
yeah.
that it's important to rediscover things because sometimes this supposed, someone might criticize you, Darian, and say, "Oh, well, that was a thing that was already well known." But I mean, how well known was it if you didn't know it?
Right.
Right. Of course. What if you had someone join, your stream that was even newer to the game than you were?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the data all archived? A lot of fighting games, you see on Twitter all the time about this, this big push we have as a culture, fighting gaming culture
Mm-hmm.
toward, you know, maybe one day having like a unified information distribution platform where we can actually save and archive all this data. But the reality is that as of now, where is the information? It's nowhere, right? It's all on
Mm-hmm.
some SRK forum post. It's
Right.
all
There is no
on
dust loop.
some,
There is no
yeah,
like dust
some,
loop with Third Strike.
right. So on the one hand, yeah, it is sort of funny to see younger players rediscovering tech that is known pretty well by some. But at the same time, it is also important that people do rediscover the old tech and archive it in new places and otherwise, spread the word about it
Mm-hmm.
because we really don't have a centralized location for all of this information that maybe some players from literally the year 2000 might be well aware of, but we're constantly every new generation rediscovering. People are getting re-excited about because we don't have that same oral tradition that passes down tech and wisdom the way that other cultures might.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's something I was talking about in the first episode as well, with me talking to Randomator about how there should be like a central hub for everything with Third Strike, and like how like tech is being shared, or how people share their ideas or play the game,
Mm-hmm.
like how Dustloop almost has it where, like in Guilty Gear Accent Core plus R, um you can look up like the top fighters and like all their matches and who they mained in that match, and then if they ever fought a different main, and if that was a different player that you wanted them to fight, like how would this matchup go, and if it actually
Right.
happened, there's a recording of it you can find in Dustloop. It's like really, really interesting.
Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, again, there are some sites that are better than others in that respect, but yeah, I guess it is really cool in any case to see every new generation sort of finding their own stuff, right? Whether it's stuff that has existed before or stuff that's maybe really brand new.
Hmm.
But in a game like Third Strike, man, it is kind of interesting how it's been out for 21 years and so much of it has been mined already, and totally brand new stuff is very rare.
Hmm.
And yet, stuff that's new to us is totally common. Like every day, I'm playing something. I've been playing for 3 years now. I'm still very young in the game,
Hmm.
and every day I'm learning new stuff about it. So whether it's something that's been well known for generations or if it's literally brand new, hey, it's new to me, so that's dope.
Yeah, it's always like a new discovery. Like, I think that's another thing that makes people strive to like play the game more, because like, oh, I found something new. If it's worth it to use in an actual match,
Yeah,
then once I use it in an actual match and it works, they just like, oh, I'm rewarded for exploring the game, and I should be doing it more because I have fun when I do it. So just that cycle of like finding things out, using it in a match, if it works or not, then finding it again.
yeah, that's so cool. It's cool about fighting games in general.
Mm-hmm. Um, so I actually want to go to more more like from your perspective of things. So when it comes to like fighting players, like let's say in an event, or an event online tourneys, or a first to 10 example,
Mhm.
who do you think? And this can be from your opinion. It doesn't matter. Who do you think was the most intimidating player you've played, and how did you overcome that fear of intimidation if you had that?
Oh, intimidating player, huh?
Hmm. Like,
Well,
it could be like before a match or once it is the match, and then they're just like really intimidating. They're just like really hardcore.
yeah, someone that I really was really like give me butterflies. I'm like I really kind of felt kind of nervous fighting them.
Hmm.
Hmm. Well, off the top of my head, I can think of my first ever tournament that I went to, which was UMACon 2017, I think it was.
Oh wow.
The person that knocked me out of that tournament was standalone EXE,
Mm.
Claire, who now goes by 423 Locked. She is a sort of an intermediate level Hugo player,
Hmm.
one of the strongest Hugos, of course, in the Midwest. And at the time, I it was my first tournament. I was kind of drawn out there by Kyo, who invited me to come out with him. Really cool guy. If you guys know, 3 you guys know Kyo.
Hmm.
And at the time, I didn't really know the Power of the Game Night guys yet. I didn't know Rick yet. Of course, I own a guy who's a really close friend of mine now, super dope dude.
Hmm.
And the other PGN guys like PGN Steve and Monoxide. And I think that they also had a player called Silverbird there, who was kind of a rare face these days around third strike scene.
Mm.
But in any case, I was very, intimidated, not necessarily by Claire as an individual,
Mm-hmm.
but rather by the environment of it being my first tournament. I didn't know a lot of people out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I really felt like I was fighting a player that I didn't know that I really wanted to win against. And yeah, so it was definitely, I think I always have that memory of being kind of scared in that moment. And yeah, she did knock me out of that tournament. But after that, of course, I had the pleasure of meeting her more personally. She's so cool, really cool player.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, aside from that, I'm trying to think of other times where I really felt sort of intimidated to fight. But really, I guess one thing that I consider to be sort of a benefit to the fact that I'm kind of a streamer of Third Strike
Mm-hmm.
is that I'm such close friends with so many people that play. So like when I play a lot of people, I really don't typically feel that intimidated.
Mm-hmm. Because you know
Um,
them or something like that, for
yeah, in
example,
fact, I
right?
know them, or otherwise because I'm experienced against their character, or I feel like even if I don't know them personally, we could end up being friends. I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
guess typically, if you guys know me, I'm typically pretty laid back when I play in tournament. I'm pretty relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm gonna always remember at least that first tournament where I really got knocked out by Standalone at the time. That was their handle at that point, and just being like, "Whoa, this is really scary." I was really like intimidated.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since then, yeah, I'm typically pretty laid back at tournaments.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bootcamp in the chat says here, shout out to Hispanic Japs at Kyoto 3S. Yeah, such a great guy. He's one of those players that's so strong in the game and so welcoming to newbies and so like ever present. If you
Mm-hmm.
stream 3S, he's there. And I feel like I think KD Alpha told me a story at Bootcamp about how Kyo got him into the game in some capacity.
Oh
I
wow.
think that there are probably so many players out there that that Kyo was instrumental in pulling them deeper into the game. So shout out to Kyo.
They knew what the
3S
seed they
owes
were
him a big
planting.
debt.
They understood.
Yeah, 3S owes him a big debt in the way that he's kind of like the man in the shadows, getting newbies into the game. So shout out to that.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that cycle is happening again. Like a new generation is like blossoming with like Randomator, me, Spife, who else can I have? J Motive. Even though J Motive's been playing since like he says he's been playing for a while, but he just started streaming, so I could fairly say that he's new to the online 3S community.
Right, or at least the front facing online community. I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
players played on Fightcade a lot, and they know a lot of Fightcade guys, but they haven't really put themselves out there to meet like the Twitch community, right, for Third Strike. So
Mm-hmm.
I agree that whether or not you've been playing the game for a few years on Fightcade, there's something special about coming out of the closet, so to speak, and putting yourself out there on Twitch and kind of meeting strangers, right, and getting games and talking more while you play.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, shout out to all the players out there that are kind of, I guess I think. Let me put it this way, Kioske. You're totally right that 3S is fucking popping off on Twitch right now.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm really grateful for. I think if you play 3S, you gotta be grateful for that, right? Like, it's a game that's fucking 21 years old, and you can watch 3S any time of the day or night on Twitch.
Yeah, there's always gonna be
And
like either Japan players streaming at night, so you got that, and then you got like us just streaming during the day.
right. So you can meet new players, and you can get games, and you can ask questions, and I think that's going to be a big part of keeping 3S alive going forward. So if you guys are out there and you want to play 3S, you want to stream it, more power to you, because you guys are the ones that keep our game alive, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody, you can only play a game you've heard of, right?
Oh
You only play a
yeah.
game you've heard of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I remember I started playing 3S because I used to play Virtua Fighter, and I was reading on the virtuafighter.com forums about other good fighting games. What would you guys recommend?
Mm-hmm.
And people were saying, well, if you must play a game aside from Virtua Fighter, Third Strike is the other best fighting game ever made. And if
Mm-hmm.
someone hadn't said that to me, I would never have thought about playing it, years later.
Mm-hmm.
So it is so important to a game like ours that we spread the word about it, and then we let people know that it's a good game, and that they can come by and watch a stream and say, hey, who should I play if I started playing this game? Well,
All it takes
whoever
is
you
like
want.
a biased recommendation or a non-biased. It doesn't
Right.
even matter as long as
Right.
they've heard of it. Then you might even check it out.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if it's biased or not. All that really matters is that they see people enjoying it and playing it, and that they know that if they want to play it, they can play it too.
Mm-hmm.
That's was lost to time in the year 2000. It's a game that's still being played, and that if you guys want to pick it up right now, you can.
Yeah. So I actually wanted to know this for a while. How, because you've been before you streamed like a variety, like let's say Uncharted for the week, and then you have Brutus Day Tuesday, and you have like
Mhm.
pizza or a $4 game night. Like I knew before this you were like mainly a Third Strike streamer, right?
No, that's not totally fair to say. I used to stream 3S every day, but that's because
Yeah.
my schedule at the time was it was like like a creative block, like programming. That was
Hmm.
followed by Third Strike every day, followed by a long play. So we've kind of always been a variety stream,
Hmm.
but there was a time where we had Third Strike
Yeah, just
fucking
like third strike for
4
like
or
a
5 nights
certain
a
amount
week.
of time, then you would transition to something else.
Right.
Yeah,
Whereas now we
that's
focus
what I
on
meant.
3S only one night a week. So yeah, there's much less 3S now than there was.
Hmm. So like, how'd you break through this point, like, uh, of like scrunching it down to just Bruise Day Tuesday? Like, how'd you break through that point, or like, what made you want to make that decision and say like, okay, like, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but like, what made you want to just put Bruise Day Tuesday?
Well, dude, it was pretty tough, man. It was very heart wrenching at the time because I love Third Strike,
Hmm.
and cutting down 3S throughout the week was a really tough decision that I had to make. I made the decision with the advisement of some of my closest friends
Hmm.
that I had talked to and did some real soul searching with. But I finally decided to stop playing 3S as often, like daily, just because I was getting really fucking salty. That's exactly
Hmm.
why. It was a matter of exhaustion with the game because I was playing it so much. I really do. In retrospect, I feel like I was exhausting myself. Not just emotionally, but also in terms of like muscle memory.
Hmm.
I feel like looking back on the way I was playing right before I went to one night a week,
Hmm.
I kind of think that if you don't take a break from playing a game like Third Strike or any fighting game, I suppose, you're going to have issues with having an open mind about it. Right. I think sometimes I kind of get very closed minded about what would work, what wouldn't work, what I should do, what I shouldn't do,
Hmm.
because my hands remembered what I was doing yesterday and then the day before that. And then going back literally in my case, years of playing Third Strike 5 nights a week. So when I stopped playing it daily and started going to once a week, not only did my attitude improve in terms of like the managing sodium,
Hmm.
but also I found that it was much more liberating to try new things and experiment, and it really helped me kind of learn the game to not play it literally every single day.
I get you.
So yeah, I do kind of feel like, so yeah, to answer your question, the single motivating factor as to uh, why I stopped playing Third Strike 4 nights a week or 5 nights a week was just because I was really hating the online experience, dude. I was
Mm.
having a lot of difficulty coping with going from playing at my monthly shout out to Poverty Game Night in Detroit, excuse me, the Poverty Game Night in Saginaw, who would run events in Detroit.
Hmm.
Shout out to running all the people that helped out through my stream in terms of helping me afford travel, so I could afford to go to places like TFC and Texas Showdown and UmaCon and Frosty
Man.
Faustings.
Yeah.
And what I kind of found was coming back from an event we were playing on CPS 3 to going online. There came a point where I just couldn't stand it anymore. I really couldn't stand trying to, convince myself that online was okay, or the opposite was true. Right, the fact that I was trying to convince myself that you know online was trash and that no one should ever play online. And you hear people say
Hmm.
all the time, right, Darren? Like people say, "Oh, online's not serious. It's bullshit. Don't worry about it
Right.
too much.
Hmm.
It's not real." And I kind of gave up. There's always this emotional turmoil, like how can I keep playing online 3S when it's so much of it is bullshit compared to offline 3S?
Hmm.
Really, all it took was me to reduce my sodium intake and play it only once a week instead of 5 times a week. And that really helped me manage my expectations a lot better and really have a lot more fun playing and saying, yeah, it's online. Yeah, it's got shortcomings, but it's still a great way to meet new players and to level up your game and try new things and learn new matchups.
Hmm.
It's imperfect, but I guess I kind of feel like when you're not so invested as I was into it, which is so wholly,
Hmm.
that it becomes much easier to manage that the pain of online.
Yeah.
So yeah, my advice to anybody that's watching that's getting very salty or pissed off at Third Strike because of the shortcomings of online, or even maybe just their community or their own shortcomings, just fucking take a break, man. Slow it down. It's been around for 21 years, guys. It's not going nowhere. You can play the game once a week or once a month or once every day or once every hour if you want to, but it doesn't really matter. Do what works for you because it ain't going nowhere.
Yeah. Especially at the pace that it's going right now. Like, people making Tommy Two Steps tournament, like a battle royale theater. Like, people just come out with these Third Strike events like weekly or monthly, and it's just crazy because they put so much heart and commitment into it, and it just brings more players. Like, I can shout this one person out. His name on Fight K2 is Mr. 64, I think.
Mhm.
And I remember him just mainly going to Tommy's battle royale theater, and I just saw this player grow like all of a sudden. Like, I was at the second battle royale theater he ever done, and I beat him in a it's like a one and done. It's like a Japan thing, right?
Yep.
and then I beat him, and then I just take a break from Third Strike for a little bit. I go to Tommy's like 6th or 7th battle royale theater. Mr. 64, he beats me with 12 because he mains 12 now, and I'm like, this is absolutely like batshit crazy. Like, not because they beat me, but because like how strong they got in that matter of time. And it's just like, man, these things are doing work for people. These things are really helping people out with the game, and not only that, but teaching them what to do, and
Yeah,
always coming back for more.
right. You're totally right. Right. And that's just, I was speaking more in terms of being a player in my case. To answer your question, I was talking more from my player perspective, but
Hmm.
you're totally right. As a content creator, there's something to be said, right, about streaming Third Strike regularly, if not daily, right? If
Hmm.
not weekly, if not bi-weekly, then at least monthly. Just it goes without saying that, the more streams we have, the better. But also, you make a very good point that if you if you kind of grow a community around your stream and you kind of pull people into the game through playing on your channel, you're doing so much good for Third Strike and for that person individually, right? It's kind of cool to have a new player kind of discover this awesome game through your work.
Hmm.
So totally, man. Like, whether you're streaming Third Strike, however often you can do it, just do it. Stream 3S and play it and meet new players and kind of spread the word, spread the
Hmm.
gospel.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Bootcamp Click in the chat, of course. He says that 8 to 11 p.m. was 3S on the daily. Yeah, Bootcamp has been a part of our channel now on VENCABOT since we started, 3 years
Hmm.
playing Third Strike now, and he's definitely the homie. Shout out to Audrey Apple as well, who joined our channel for Final Fantasy Tactics, but also was a huge fan of Third Strike, so that definitely worked for me.
Hmm. What was I gonna say? So let me see if I have any more questions, because I was like doing like top down, the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Um. Oh, this one. It's actually really important. Because it's essentially around the podcast, like inside the mind game. So, what are your thoughts on mind games actually, and how do you think it plays a role in fighting games? Like, how do you think either intimidating someone or thinking that, okay, I can't do low forward because they'll parry this or they'll do that. Like, how do you think mind games play a major factor in like competition?
Oh yeah, mind games are hugely important, man, and it just boils down to the fact that although so many of us as players are still working through the game's literal mechanics, like trying to figure out how to approach the game in the most simple mechanical way.
Hmm.
Once you get past that point, that's where the game really begins, right? I guess the reason why mind games are so important is that when you watch top level players, they're typically those who you have the most, spectators get the most invested in.
Hmm.
Those players, they know the damn mechanics, right? They know the game in and out in terms of the way that it plays, the way the rules behave, and so you can't at that point you can't win anymore just by being better at the game than somebody else.
Hmm.
And so the game becomes so psychological, right? You have to, like you said, you made some really great examples. And for a game like Third Strike, trying to scare them from pressing a certain button by buffering parries,
Hmm.
trying to, force them to start blocking because you're using, let's say, high priority moves like specials or heavies.
Hmm.
Uh, I was playing a game with my friend Monoxide on the last Bruise Day Tuesday, and he did this thing to my Alex, which of course all strong shotos will do, which is they will press crouching fierce and buffer that into super to beat Alex's far mediums.
Hmm.
And after he blew me up with that and with Shippu Jinrai Kyaku,
Hmm.
I noticed watching the VENCABOT YouTube channel that I forget who, it must have been Katie Alpha I was fighting at the time. Did the same thing with his Ryu. Yeah, he buffered crouching fierce into Denjin
Hmm.
with Ryu. And in those situations, that's what scares Alex out of pressing his medium buttons.
Hmm.
And at that point, although whiffing crouching fierce as a Shoto is not that safe because it can get blown up by sweeps on
Hmm.
reaction, once you've scared a player out of pressing this button, you have won that part of the game, right? So
Right.
it's interesting that it's a situation where we're not talking about strictly mechanical, overcoming another player through understanding the game mechanically better than they do, but rather it's a matter of beating them in these little psychological games, right? The fact that you can stop me from doing this by doing that. Now I'm scared to press that button anymore. Well, shit. Now you can start to walk up toward me and do things at a closer range, right? You can start getting into
Hmm.
low forward range easier and hitting, confirming off of crouching shorts.
In a
It's
way, it's basically just removing you from using that button because you're too afraid to.
right, and it's
And it's
yeah. I
an
think that
yeah, you can go.
yeah, in a game like Third Strike, it's such a psychological game because of the way the parry behaves and the way that the priority system works for specials and normals, and the way that every character in the game has their own like gameplay, like their own game plan they want to kind of build toward.
Hmm.
It's definitely the kind of game where before you start playing the game, like before it even says like round start, you gotta start thinking to yourself, okay, how am I gonna get to where I play my game, right? How am I gonna get to the point where my game actually gets opened up?
Hmm.
And that is itself like a meta game, right? As an example, for instance, as an Alex player, I always kind of default to Alex examples, but when you're playing Alex and you're fighting a character like Chun Li, you really can't beat her on the ground. It's like impossible.
Hmm.
But you can't just jump at her. You can beat her by jumping at her, but if you just do that, she's an anti-air you, right? So you have to fight her on the ground, or at least feign fighting her on the ground long enough that you can distract her from reacting to your jump. And that's
Hmm.
true for characters like Dudley as well, and so many of the characters in the cast that before they can play their game, they gotta play a meta game. They gotta play a game to set up their game, right? So you could definitely argue that that's a mind game. That's you're playing a psychological game that sort of exists in the like a sort of a buffer, between the mechanical level of the game, like the boilerplate,
Hmm.
and the totally high level, like where your hands exist, right? So it's kind of cool that fighting games in general have that aspect of not just being games you can beat by playing very quote unquote well, right? They're games that you have to actually fight a human being. That's kind of what makes them so profound.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I kind of miss sometimes as a variety streamer, especially. I kind of miss sometimes, the fact that in another game like Dark Souls, I can just beat the game, man. Right? Like you can get good enough and just beat the game and you're done.
Hmm.
But in a game like Third Strike, I feel like if you go into a game like 3S with the mentality of I want to beat it, the way that I oftentimes have in the past, it's not the best way to go in because you're never going to beat a game like Third Strike. You have to actually overcome another player, and that same player will then overcome you next week because they learned from the way you played, right? So, there is no, you don't ever beat Third Strike. You don't ever beat a player in Third Strike. All you can do is, at best, win a game. That's what
Yeah.
you should always be striving toward, right?
Hmm. Because yeah, you make a good point there when it's like you can't technically beat anyone, like they're the player, but you can like.
Right, the credits never roll. The credits never roll. Yeah, I can't
Hmm.
fucking, I can't fight, Katie Alpha and then beat him, 10 times in a row in the first attempt, which I always do, as Katie will tell you guys. I always beat him. If he gets around, he's lucky, but sometimes he gets him. But if I can beat Katie Alpha 10 times in a row, I don't ever see the credits roll.
Hmm.
Right? I'm just joking, by the way. Katie fucking frees me.
Yeah.
I'm great. Yeah, Darren's like, what are you talking about?
I
Yeah,
was
Katie frees me. Katie does. Yeah, the credits never roll. I just wanted to find. I was looking in the chat for an example, and I saw Katie's name in the chat. But yeah, the credits never roll in Third Strike. You don't ever beat somebody and be like, "Hey, I finally beat him," right?
Hmm.
And that's sort of like I've said in the past. There are certain players that I kind of consider my rivals, and I'll never forget this quote from Katie Alpha, who's a friend of mine. I'm grateful to have. I told him, I said, "Dude, I want so badly to beat Kashyyyk and Arteus. I just want so badly to beat. I cannot stop playing through until I beat these guys."
Hmm.
And Katie was like, "Well, dude, congrats." You beat those guys, right? You've beaten them. You've beaten them many times. But the fact of the matter is that, you just never can beat a player,
Hmm.
right? You can never actually beat a player because again, the credits never roll. I'm going to always go back and forth with somebody. And it's like, it's a game that I think all of us, I should rephrase that, right? Many of us go in with the mentality of, wanting to prove something, having a chip on your shoulder, wanting to demonstrate that these players that at one point they were beating you, now you want to beat them. That's
Hmm.
all well and good, but the reality is that you can never, you never actually accomplish that. You never actually get that satisfaction of being at the top of the mountain because there is no top of the mountain, right? It's going to always be a climb, no matter what you're doing. So,
Hmm.
on one hand, that's really, really special. That's why it makes it so fucking addicting, I think. But on the other hand, I think that players have to appreciate in a way that I've never been able to that you know, you're never going to be able to. You have to kind of accept yourself as a player, right? You can't really kind of put these unreachable goals between yourself and your own satisfaction with the game to say, I have to do this, or I have to accomplish that, or I have to beat this person,
Hmm.
because you're never going to be able to do it, man. It's never. It's just not a thing.
Yeah, and I also have seen I've seen this with myself and other people that there's this never-ending cycle of instance where let's say you can beat me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or for example, you can beat me like in a first attempt, you can probably beat me in a first attempt, but what if, or not what if, but of course there's going to be someone better than you. There's always going to be
Yeah.
someone better than you. And then what if that person that's better than you can be beaten by the person you can always beat? you know.
Hmm.
So there's always that cycle of we can always beat each other, but we can't really like. You get what I'm trying to say, though, right?
Oh yeah, and that ties into something that my friend Mutant always says, right, Katie? He talks about how you can't really. There isn't really like it's a total waste of time
Mm-hmm.
to try to say who's the best, right? Who is the best? Who's better than who? Let's
Mm-hmm.
make a tier list of well, he beats him, he beats him. No, you can't do that. It's impossible, right? For the same reason you just said, Darian.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't do that because although he might beat, player A might beat player B, and player C might beat player A, it just makes this tangled web of what it really describes is what a complex and fascinating game Third Strike is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's not. There's nothing about this that's linear, dude. Like it doesn't matter if you're talking about tier lists, or you're talking about player tier lists, you're talking about matchups. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not a linear game. So yeah, you're totally right that if you try to set a goal for yourself as a player of like I want to kind of climb the roster of like players, it's sort
Mm-hmm.
of kind of a waste. Like it's not really a worthwhile ambition. I feel like what's really important is instead, growing more comfortable with your own game, uh, feeling like you understand the game better. Like that's really, I think, a more worthwhile ambition, right? To try to
Mm-hmm.
understand the game better and try to become more comfortable with your own understanding of why things play out the way they do. Because if you try to compare yourself to other players, it's going to be a really uh, fraught journey.
Mm-hmm. And it's also like, what's the word I'm looking for? It also like makes you seem smaller in the eyes of other people, like
Yeah, for sure.
morally, you know.
Yeah, definitely. You have to, whatever works, I guess, again, whether people are judging you for your motivations or not, what really is important is the fact that I really do feel like some approaches to the game will help you learn faster than others, right? Like, I mean, depending on your motivation, you're going to find yourself at a different point in the game than somebody else who had maybe a motivation that worked better for them, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
or otherwise was more like sincere or more suited to a game like Third Strike.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, as you play, be considerate of like why you're playing.
Right. Um, what was I gonna say? So I want to also like not segment, but like I want to change the topic a little bit, right?
Okay.
So how about we talk about like about the community and like how we think at least the community has been like what I'm trying to say basically is like in your eyes and in my eyes, what do you think the community is? Like what do you think um I'm really at a loss for words here. What do you think that the community like involves like who's in this community and what makes it so great and what do you think why you think this should be going on more or something. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No problem, dude. But I think that one way to answer that question is the jazzy circuit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I really believe in jazzy as an ideal that's been kind of kicking around now for a handful of years, but about 3 years, including its like conception phase,
Mm-hmm.
where we're seeing uh, Third Strike kind of unifying as a offline community, right? It's been really crazy to see a game that's 21 years old being played all over the country, not just at locals and majors and regionals, but as part of a cohesive unit that encourages players to travel
Mm-hmm.
and encourages sort of like a system where these scoreboards are being compiled. Like it just blows my mind, man. Like it's a 21-year-old game, and you can go onto a Smash page and figure out like who's grinding,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's so cool. So yeah, to answer your question, I think that there's several levels of any fighting game community. Right? At first, you have the players you play with.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to always be like level one in the FGC. Right, every individual player has their own personal friends that they play with the most, whether it be their local scene or some guys they know from Fightcade. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, you have every every online platform has a community that kind of surrounds that. Of course, we have the Twitch community. We've got like a Twitter or Discord communities that of Third Strike,
Mm-hmm.
and then for a game like 3S especially, I feel like the community that profound, most fascinating, the most like rich is going to always be the one that's the offline community. I would say, based on my experience as a player in the U.S., I'm talking about the United States Third Strike, offline scene.
Mm-hmm.
Every every city that has Third Strike has their own player base and their own scenes. their own their own group they grind with. But when you watch majors, man, that's where the magic happens. And Darian, it was my pleasure to hang out with you at your first ever major, or third. I
Yeah.
think it was your first ever offline tournament. And
Likewise.
so from experience that when you see all these guys from all over the country getting together and playing a third strike together,
Hmm.
God, it's so sick.
It
You
really
get to
is.
hang out and get games with players from all over and get some Denny's and hang out and fucking bunk up, and it's just such a cool time.
Hmm.
Drive around town and talk third strike, and it's like for me that's the magic of the FGC is getting together. Right, the fact that it really is a pleasure and an honor to hang out with people through Twitch, through Fightcade, meet new players from around the country. But the offline scene, the kind of surrounds the CPS3 hardware for
Hmm.
Third Strike and the CRTs and the PVMs. Uh,
It's been so long since I've played on what's it called? A super gun or like
yeah,
a CPS3 machine. Like I almost forgot how good it is. So when I'm like playing online for longer than ever, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe it is kind of similar, you know. But no, it's
yeah,
not.
exactly. Yeah, shout out to COVID-19 for making it so hard for us to get together for the last fucking year and a half by now. But yeah, the offline scene is really really magical for a game like Third Strike and for any fighting game, I'm sure. And so yeah, to answer your question, I really talk about how I feel about the community at large for Third Strike.
Hmm.
You're talking about the Jazzy circuit. You're talking about all these individual TOs on the country that have been working, putting their blood, sweat, and tears into running this 21-year-old game. People like Onagai, Flannel Jack, Katie Alpha, Arshad, just so many names that come to mind. Players that, of course, Herb Durkin, who used to run tournaments for his scene in South Carolina.
Hmm.
Just players that, they put their own money on the line, they put their own time and effort on the line to give players a space to play Third Strike on CPS3 or otherwise. Yeah, that's really the magic of a game as old as ours still being played to this day because players are actually putting effort into it. It doesn't happen by magic, right? Players
Hmm.
actually have been working really hard to make that a reality.
Right. It's not like just
So yeah,
like
that's
you say it happens and it's just there. You actually gotta
right.
like put in the work. Yeah.
Right. So for if you want to talk about the FGC, the community for Third Strike, you're talking about the fact that for 21 years, players have been putting this game out there. They've been making themselves vulnerable through every new generation, right? From 2 4 and 5 and all this other all the other games being played right now. These guys are going to fucking to their local venues and saying, hey, here's Third Strike. Who wants to play 3S?
Hmm.
So shout out to all those guys for sure. The thanks to them that we even have this game still.
Yeah. I really wish like I had a closer scene near me because the
Yes.
closest scene I can have is like Galloping Ghost Arcade, and that's like super far away.
Right. Well, you're what 20 now, I think.
No, I'm not 20. I'm 18.
Oh my god, dude. In any case, so basically, if you guys don't know my friend Darren, Kyosuke from Chicago, the main scene in Chicago is plays out of Logan Arcade,
Hmm.
and that's a bar. And in Chicago, there's a law where you cannot enter a bar unless you're 21, which as a Michigander blows my mind because here in Michigan you can go into a bar, you just can't drink.
Hmm.
But in any case, yeah, Darren, trust me, once the time comes, you're going to be able to go to Logan with the guys. It's going to be a lot easier for you to get good games and meet new players in that respect.
Hmm.
Chicago is really a really cool scene. I think that yeah, right now it's kind of tough for you being in Chicago but not able to play at Logan's. It's kind of a drag.
Hmm.
But say la vie, dude. Say la vie.
Yeah. I've been really hoping for like something to come up, like maybe something new opens up or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
that's like the stars have to align in order for that to happen.
Yeah, yeah. There's a place called the Candy Cave. Is also Chicago, right? It's kind of like
Yeah,
an up
I've
and
been
coming
hearing about that
venue.
so much, but I don't. It doesn't like I've looked at the Facebook page as well, and I don't see a location. Or I try to reach out to people and I don't see a location.
Yeah, it's like a little bit more low key. I mean, like I said, it might be up and coming. Might be lucky and find that in the next couple of years it'll be more of a hop and spot for Third Strike.
Because I would totally go anywhere for Third Strike, but sadly even the one at Galloping Ghost Arcade, they have American cabs, so that you know what that means, right? Uh, Mainly if you have an American cab at your arcade, that means the button layout is just straight. It's not curved, and it has a stick that doesn't have a ball
Yeah,
top on
bat
it.
top. Yeah, it's got a bat top. Yeah,
Hmm.
and the buttons feel mad springy. The buttons are Hap buttons. Hap is the manufacturer that makes those stupid buttons and the stupid bat top sticks.
Hmm.
But they have their fans, especially among the Mortal Kombat community. But yeah, they're kind of ass. Welcome aboard, Neon. Got Neon right in the chat. Neon's also a guy that I had the pleasure of hanging out with at Alpha Attack. Kind of like Darren. I've only ever met him once in person, which is kind of a drag. But Neon, like Kyosuke, is a friend of mine that I consider to be very close, despite the fact we've only had the pleasure of meeting once. We also got Dean. What's up, Dean?
Circus cancel. We got it open here.
Yeah, Circus Cancel. That's the homie Dane from Scrub series.
Mm. KD says it's very south of Chicago. Not an easy trip from what I've heard about Candy Cave. Yeah, south side of Chicago is very rough. Like it's just rugged streets. No one cleans the streets, so you could run over some like broken bottles and like your tires could get popped or something. It's one of those scenarios, and it's very common to happen. So if it happens to you, and if you're not from Chicago, then you would be surprised. But if you're from Chicago, you would just be just time to replace the tires again. You would just go about your day like normal. It's just like that. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
there. Yeah. Yeah, I'm reading the chat about the American stick apologists in the chat. Come on, guys, grow up. The only person I respect that for their love of American style sticks is Ona Guy. I'll tell you why. Because Ona Guy he makes his own cabs. He
Oh
builds
yeah.
cabinets
Mm-hmm.
and builds fight sticks. So if he tells me that he likes to play on Western sticks, I'm like, all right, dude. Anybody else, I'm like, come on. Don't play on the fucking concave buttons, Audrey Apples.
Yeah,
So
I
they
actually
feel like
wanna I actually wanna do this. Like, if we go past the 1 hour mark, which we just did, I wanna like just talk. Like, this is like the outro sort of section where we can like talk with chat and like talk about what's going on currently. I feel like that'd be really very good to talk about. Like, just interact with chat at the last like let's say 20 minutes of the podcast or 10 minutes.
I love chat for the whole stream. Yeah, you guys know me.
Mm-hmm.
Chat. You guys are welcome to ask questions if you guys want to. I'm sure Darren will be happy to answer them as well as we go along.
Yeah. I thrive on questions from the chat because I just ran out of questions on my paper.
So Apple says here that she used to like the HAP buttons for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Apple's my thing about the HAP parts is not so much that I cannot stand the fact they're concave or they have a ball top, but guys, do you guys agree that HAP buttons have the weirdest reverb when you hit them? Like I cannot stand pressing those American style buttons. You can feel the spring through your whole hand.
Oh yeah, the spring. I feel that.
Yeah, you hit it and it's like boing. Fuck. It feels
Oh,
so weird.
I know a cab. It's a 1-Up cab that I used to play. There's a store in Micro Center. It's called Micro Center that's in Chicago, and they have like this 1-Up cab that you can like test it out, just like so. But it's so worn out that once you press the buttons, you can like it makes a sound and it like vibrates throughout the entire place. It's terrible. The buttons.
I can't stand it personally, but Apple said she doesn't really say she liked them, just that she's accustomed to them. Yeah, they have their apologists. I mentioned that in the Mortal Kombat scene, it's a very American style game. Players sometimes favor HAP buttons and sticks for that game.
Like helping go sticks. Oh, you can go.
I played last week. My hands hurt after an hour. I'm playing on an actual Apples. Why are you playing on HAP buttons? Are you actually traveling or at some kind of place that had a cab or what? Boot camps I love them. I still use mine when I go to play on Dreamcast. Okay,
Dreamcast.
the MAS.
MK Surprise. All of them.
MK is a game that a lot of players played on SNES and Genesis, so it makes sense to me, Dane, that some people would be accustomed to pad.
I actually have a question, David.
Yeah.
So I shared this on my first episode, but I wonder if anyone even knew about this. So I was talking about Mugen, whatever. And I was talking about how my best friend introduced me to a modded version of Mortal Kombat 3 and like how it was like my first Mugen experience. And I just wonder, like, have you had any Mugen experiences like with just playing games on Mugen?
No, I actually haven't. I'll tell you guys why. Because really, for one thing, I never really was into 2D fighting games before I played Third Strike in general. But also, I'm not really into like really aggressive fighting games or games that are really like very buttonsy. I think that Mugen really came about as a sort of an answer to the whole MVC2 culture. A lot of people wanted to make games with more and more goofy characters as a result of falling in love with MVC2 in that era. And so, yeah, I've never really been into like tag style games or games with like long combos. So Mugen never really appealed to me that much. But if we're talking Mugen, guys, I want to tell you guys this. There was a period, if you guys are around my age, I'm sure Katie will remember this, where Mugen was kind of inaccessible for a while. It was like it kind of became lost to the internet for a couple years there. And now the reason why you guys can enjoy it is that it was picked up again by new developers, and now it's open source. Oh my god, that's so sick! Mugen is so sick now because it's open source on every platform. It's so much easier than before to make your own mods, make your own games.
Mm-hmm.
That is really, really dope to me. Yeah, so Bootcamp says here that Mugen is the reason I graduated high school. Thank you. So me and Bootcamp are close in age-ish. And so I'm sure he remembers, back the OG Mugen, which was kind of more, a little bit more jank, a little bit more obscure. It was closed source back then. It was only available on Windows. And it was a little bit harder to come across mods. They're a little bit more prestigious because they're a little bit more development involved.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, after that, there was a little while where there was a time where you couldn't even find it. You had to find it on like really, relatively obscure websites. But Mugen's made a really big comeback in the last few years, courtesy of the new dev team that made it, a new open source version. So yeah, much love to Mugen. I never played it myself, but as someone that loves open source software, much love to Mugen.
Katie asked a couple questions, one for each of you. So for me, he asked one particular made you want to interview Venka for this episode. What made me want to interview Venka was because I know him the most. Or at least I'd like to think I know him the most. He was the very first guy that or have I ever told you, David, of how I found your stream?
You might have.
Well, I'll just share it again because I find it's a very funny experience. So I just had 30th on my PS4. I just had 30th on my PS4 just because my best friend got it for me, and then I was playing, and then I went into a public lobby that you were hosting, and then I probably got beaten up or something in the game, and then I believe it was XGIEX. That's what his name was. Something like that. And then he was like, "Oh, dude, I saw you on stream. You're pretty good at the game." And I was like, "What? Stream? Where?"
Hey, you mean Dane? You mean X Siege X?
I think so.
That circus canceled.
Oh, really? What? I didn't know. Yeah. So yeah, circus canceled. When you told me like, "Oh, dude, I saw you on stream or something," and I was like, "What stream?" And then you're like, "Oh yeah, twitch.tv/VENCABOT." And then I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll check it out." And then I found your stream, and I was like, "Oh, let's just play for a bit." And then after that, I realized that, oh, I also followed him. So when you went live, it would ping on my phone. And then...
So that means you owe it all to circus cancel then.
Yeah, really.
Shout out to Dane, dude. Shout
out to Dane. So I would be on my phone, and then I just see your ping come up because I never used Twitch. So I didn't know what that meant. So I was like, oh, VENCABOT's streaming. I was like, okay, we can watch him. You're playing Dragon's Dogma at like 2 a.m. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I was just sucked in. I was just like, I loved your commentary. I loved everything about it. And then I just wanted to come back for more because once, what was it? Once you came back to stream Third Strike the next day, I think, I was already available, so I could just play Third Strike. That's how it started.
Yeah, it means a lot to me, dude. Yeah, I remember when you and I first met. I love meeting new players for Third Strike, especially when they want to play again the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, that's sort of like the barometer, right? Like you meet a player. I got something to put this way. As someone's been streaming 3S for years now, I go back and look at our YouTube archive for our channel and find so many names of players that were there for one stream and they never came back ever for another stream, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they played and they might have been beginners, they might have been intermediates, and they were just kind of gone. So when a player like Frozen Void, he joins us for stream A, and then he's there for stream B, and then he's there for stream C.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you were a beginner, it was clear that you loved Third Strike and that you wanted to kind of become a part of our community and part of our little group of players. Mm-hmm. And that's really rewarding for me. So I appreciate that. I remember, there was a time where I didn't really know you all that well. And then it's one of those things where, over the years, you kind of become more familiar. I learned not only just your play style, but also, your personality through the Twitch chat. Mm-hmm. It's been a hell of a journey. Something that I'm really grateful to have a story for so many of my friends in the chat. So yeah, thank you so much, dude. It's a pleasure coming on your show here and hanging out and talking shit about Third Strike.
Yeah.
After hanging out now for going on what we probably past year or two now.
Yeah, probably. Jeez, it's been so long. I still remember yesterday when I was just like, we're chilling with my best friend like upstairs in this exact house and like just hanging out. I really miss those times because of COVID. But I want to touch up because Katie had a question for you. For VENCABOT, what is one piece of advice for newer streamers pertaining 3S that you would think would be most beneficial for them?
That's a good question, Katie. And my answer to that is the way I'd answer for, I'm still very new to streaming. I've been streaming now for about 3 years. But I will say is one thing I've learned in general for any game. I'm gonna mutate that for Third Strike in a minute here, but for any game, guys, you for my money, I think what people want when they visit a stream is they want hosting. They want you to be talking and sharing your thoughts about the game.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a face game doesn't hurt. But I guess to tie that to Third Strike, what I want to say is that if you want to start streaming Third Strike, you really have to commentate the matches, man. And if not that, then at least discuss the game and your thoughts on the game.
Mm-hmm.
So many streams I see are very low key in terms of just having the gameplay running. There's no actual hosting going on. And don't get me wrong, that's really cool. And some people actually prefer to watch those kind of streams. But I think that they're going to be much slower to grow. So if your ambition for streaming is to grow your channel, you have to focus on hosting, period. Because you can watch Third Strike anywhere. You can literally open up Fightcade right now and spectate any match you wanted, right? So I think that if your ambition for streaming is just to archive your own matches and to have a place for your friends to come and watch you play, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that on its own. But if your ambition is to kind of grow your community and be a platform that brings new players to Third Strike, you really have to get on the mic, man, and commentate your matches.
Right.
So yeah, I would say that's my piece of advice for new streamers, particularly in 3S, right? You have to really open your mouth and be talking the whole time. Even if you're not necessarily that confident in your game knowledge, even if some guy comes by your chat and says, "Hey man, you're just talking about your bullshit, that ain't even true." You just gotta open your mouth, man, and talk, and at least share your thoughts. And if someone corrects you, then be open to that as well.
Right.
But you basically have to, I think personally, my like ideal in that respect, KD, came from my early experience watching Street Fighter 4. So before I was ever a part of the FTC, I watched Street Fighter 4 as a spectator. That was the first game I actually got into watching as a fighting game, and it really blew me away how fascinating it was that you could have this commentator on the mic that could, depending on the way that they decide to host, they could either make it more hype and more exciting and more fun and silly, or they could make it seem as though you could understand the game better, Darian, that you had never even played before, right? Like I think that kind of like football or basketball or any fighting games, any kind of sport. If you don't understand the rules of the game, there's going to be a limit to how much you can get invested in the drama.
Right.
Right. Like if you don't understand what moments are supposed to be tense, if you don't understand which ones are supposed to be kind of more relaxed, you don't understand when someone's going to score, you don't get into that human drama aspect of it as easily. And so I think that it's really important to commentate every match as though it's someone's first time watching Third Strike. Right. You have to sort of communicate to them, where the tension lies. Why is this, exciting? What's going on in this moment in a way that might not necessarily be clear to someone that doesn't understand how 3S is played or even a 2D fighting game is played. Because there was a time where, I was watching Street Fighter 4. I had no idea about, the way that, footsies played out or why you'd want to press a button like this and that spot or how a hit confirm worked, right? Like why it was so important that if Ken standing strong connects, there's all this drama attached to that, right? So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that if your ambition as a streamer is to grow your audience and bring new people into Third Strike, your number one goal should be to, work on your commentary.
All right, so I'm gonna close this out with the final question because I know I told Bootcamp this that Audrey said, David, if you had to share a one bed hotel room.
Yeah, who would I want to share it with? Is that the question? I don't think I understand the question.
Oh, they just said if you had to share a one bed hotel room, probably they meant like who would you want to share it with?
Apples. Clarify your question. We have apples in the chat right now. She's drawing pictures of gooses in our chat instead of being constructive. So Dane says here, Scrub Series had that for months. They literally named their channel to deflect the, hey, you guys aren't that great. Yeah, it's Scrub Series, right? No apples. I thought that I was the only person that could probably have that emoji. He finally got it. Now I feel less special. Here,
2020 rivalry?
I'm about to counterattack that. Can I counterattack it? Where's my... Oh, did it expire? I don't see it anymore.
Uh-oh.
It's open, so I can answer it however I want. Well, I've shared one-bedroom hotel rooms before in the FGC. And I'm going to answer your question. I'm choosing to answer it, Apples, in what is your tech? If you have to share a one-bedroom hotel room, what do you do? And here's my answer to that question, guys. You could be like me, and whenever I travel, I always bring a cot with me. So even if I'm not going to events, just in case, my car always has a cot in the back. So it's kind of like a little bed.
That's the tech, dude.
Also, another tech you can use probably called 11D7, guys. You guys know this technique where you have two guys in bed and one person has their head facing toward the headboard and one toward the feet.
Yeah.
That way you can share a very small bed with the minimum amount of intimacy.
Right. Yeah. I used to do that with my best friend when we were in Minnesota.
That's the tech. That's the tech, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Apples is here. Who spoons the best, huh? Who are you staying with? Who would you stay away from? Says Apples. No, I'm not going to answer that. That's I never kiss and tell.
Well, I don't
I
know.
feel like
Depends if you
Apples
snore.
stole my
That's about it.
emoji. Oh, there it is. Never mind. I found it. I'm happy now. So, come on. No, 6 times a little bit different, Neon. I prefer 11D7.
Alrighty. Well, we're gonna close this out. I will just say I had an amazing time talking with you, David.
Dude, it was my pleasure, man. I'm glad you invited me on.
Yeah. I had a blast. Like this is only the second episode and I'm just clicking immediately with all these people I'm talking to. So yeah, I'm gonna end it in a little bit. But I just want to thank everyone for watching. Thank you, Circus Cancel. I really appreciate it. I really do my research. I write down these questions. I put effort into these questions. I prep the stream beforehand. I just want to make sure it's a good stream. I don't want to make this feel like I'm just saying, "Oh, I'm going to do a podcast and just throw a bunch of things together," But hopefully you guys can tell that I actually I put love into this because I really like doing this.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have been on here. I think this shows a lot of promise. I hope that you keep doing it.
Thank
Do
you.
you have any ideas lined up for future guests so you can spoil for us, or are you just keeping it kind of close to the chest right now?
I don't know. My two big ones are definitely you, Randomator. Maybe I want to have Spife. I've been really thinking about Spife lately. He has a good history with Melee and everything.
Ooh.
Yeah, he said he was really into Melee really back in the day, and then he moved to Third Strike, and then he's he's fresh with Third Strike, I'd say. And what was it called? He was just a really I played Melee against him. He's a really good Melee player, so I think this is a good time to ask him what did you bring from Melee into Third Strike, for example,
Well, dude, interrogate his ass about fucking the free Melee hashtag, man.
Yeah,
It's a good
definitely.
time.
I think it'd be a good time for that. Yeah. So I'm really thinking about Spife. Maybe Neem. I've been thinking about Neem because I've been lurking his stream sometimes, and I really want to know more about him because I ask him some questions sometimes.
Yeah, he's mad mysterious, dude. He's a mad mysterious individual.
But yeah, probably Neem or Spife. That's mainly what I'm gonna be going for. And if not them, then I'll probably I have more people on my list, definitely.
Good shit, dude. Looking forward to it.
Alrighty, I'm gonna close the stream. Thank you guys so much.
And thank you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Have a good night, Apples, KD, Dane, Bootcamp, Neon Ride, of course, the young god. Hope you guys have a chill one.